When my daughter forgot to hang up the phone, I heard her say, "It is time he goes to a nursing home," and something inside me shattered completely. The phone rang just as I was scraping the last bits of meatloaf from my plate. Martha's recipe, though mine never quite captured the magic her hands brought to it. Even after 2 years of trying, I couldn't replicate the way she would somehow make the simplest ingredients taste like home itself. I glanced at the caller ID and felt that familiar mix of joy and ache that came with seeing my daughter's name. "Sarah. Dad. How are you holding up?" Her voice carried warmth that made my chest tighten with love and loneliness in equal measure, the way it always did when I heard echoes of Martha in her tone. I settled into Martha's reading chair, the burgundy leather worn smooth from 23 years of her evening novels. The indentation where she used to curl up was still perfectly shaped to her small frame, and I had never had the heart to let anyone else sit there. "Oh, you know me, sweetheart. Just finished dinner. About to catch the news." I didn't mention it was leftovers from 3 days ago, the same meatloaf I had been rationing like a Depression-era survivor. I didn't mention that I had spent the better part of an hour staring at Martha's photograph on the mantel, remembering how she used to hum Moon River while cooking, how she had always saved me the last bite of everything she made, even when she was too sick to eat much herself. The house felt too quiet without her voice, too empty without her gentle movements through rooms we had filled together with 42 years of marriage. Sometimes I would catch myself setting 2 plates for dinner, or brewing enough coffee for both of us. Muscle memory of a shared life that my brain hadn't quite accepted was over. "Are you eating enough? You know you can order groceries online now, right? I showed you that app last time I was there." Sarah's concern felt genuine, but underneath it was something else, a tone I had begun to recognize, but didn't want to name. It was the voice she used at work when discussing problematic clients, measured and professional, managing a situation rather than simply caring about it. "I am eating plenty," I interrupted gently, though my voice caught slightly on what came next. "Yesterday I had a little scare though. Forgot to turn off the burner under my coffee pot. Good thing I smelled it burning from the living room." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted the admission. Martha would have caught my mistake before it became dangerous. She always did. For 40 years, she had been my safety net, remembering what I forgot, catching what I missed, finishing my sentences when my mind wandered. Now I was learning to be careful for the first time in decades, and it scared me more than I would admit to anyone, even myself. The silence that followed felt heavy, loaded with implications I didn't want to face. I could picture Sarah frowning the way she had inherited from her mother, that same little crease between her eyebrows when she worried. But this pause felt different, calculating in a way that made my stomach tighten with unnamed dread. "Dad, maybe we should talk about getting someone to check on you more regularly. Michael thinks I am fine, Sarah. Really fine." I changed the subject quickly because I didn't want to hear what Michael thought. My son-in-law had opinions about everything, especially things that weren't his business. He had been living in my house for 8 months now, supposedly temporary while he found new employment, after some unspecified trouble at his last financial advisor position. But I had stopped asking when they planned to move out because the conversation always ended with vague promises and hurt feelings. "How is your business trip going? Minneapolis treating you well?" "Yes, the conference ends tomorrow. Michael's been handling most of the client meetings while I sit through endless presentations about digital marketing trends." She laughed, but it sounded forced, tired in a way that made me wonder what else was weighing on her mind. "Listen, Dad, I should probably get going. Michael and I have dinner plans with some potential investors." "Of course, sweetheart. I love you." The words came automatically, the way they had every phone call for 38 years. But tonight they felt more important somehow, weighted with something I couldn't identify. "Love you too, Dad. Take care of yourself, okay?" I heard a click, then rustling sounds. She must have dropped the phone in her purse, I thought, reaching to hang up my end. But then I heard voices, muffled but clear enough through her phone's microphone. The conversation that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my daughter's love for me. "Michael, you see how he is deteriorating?" Sarah's voice, no longer warm and caring, cut through the static with surgical precision. "He forgot to turn off the stove yesterday. What if he burns the house down? What if he hurts himself and we are legally responsible? My hand froze on the receiver. Ice spread through my chest as if someone had opened a door to the Minnesota winter and let it pour straight into my bloodstream. The coffee cup in my other hand began to shake, and I set it down carefully on the end table. My engineer's mind still functioning even as my heart began to break. It is time for a nursing home, Sarah. Michael's voice was cold. Matter of fact, the tone he used when discussing failing investments or tax write-offs. He is becoming a burden, and you know it. Your dad's a good man, but he cannot live alone anymore. We have been enabling this too long. The word burden hit me like a physical blow, a sledgehammer to the chest that knocked the air from my lungs. After 47 years of working construction in Cleveland's brutal winters, after raising Martha's daughter as my own when her first husband walked out, after paying for college and weddings and car repairs and every emergency they had ever faced, I had become a burden, a problem to be solved, a liability to be managed. The house is worth almost $1 million now. Sarah's tone shifted to pure calculation, the voice she used for business deals, not family. With Cleveland's market recovery, especially in Shaker Heights, we could probably get $900,000, maybe more. That neighborhood's really come back since the recession. My throat closed completely. She was talking about our house, the house Martha and I had bought in 1981 when Sarah was 5. The house where I would taught her to ride a bike in the driveway, where Martha had tended her through chickenpox and broken hearts and teenage rebellion. The house I had renovated room by room with my own hands, where Martha had died in our bedroom 2 years ago, while I held her hand and promised I would take care of everything. Exactly. Michael sounded pleased, satisfied with his financial analysis. We could sell it, put him somewhere decent, not too expensive, and finally get that house in Beechwood we have been looking at. The one with the lake view. My daughter laughed. Actually laughed. The sound cut through me like broken glass, sharp and deadly and completely unexpected. God, Michael, you should have seen him tonight. So grateful just to hear from me. He has no idea we are planning this. There was genuine amusement in her voice. The kind of satisfaction that comes from successfully manipulating someone who trusts you completely. The longer we wait, the more confused he will get. We should strike while he still trusts us completely. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor Martha and I had installed together 23 years ago. Every board laid by my own hands. Every nail driven with thoughts of our family's future. Of the grandchildren we had hoped would run through these halls someday. I had built this house from nothing. Raised Sarah in these rooms. Cared for Martha through her final illness in the bedroom upstairs. And now my daughter was discussing my disposal like a real estate transaction. I sat in the sudden silence of my empty house, staring at Martha's photograph on the mantel. It was my favorite picture of her, taken on our 20th wedding anniversary at that little restaurant in Little Italy, where we had had our first date. She was laughing at something I had said, her head thrown back with pure joy, her wedding ring catching the candlelight. Her eyes seemed to bore into mine with an expression I couldn't quite read. Disappointment. Warning. Or maybe just the terrible knowledge that comes to those who have already left this world and can see things the living cannot. The grandfather clock in the hallway, Martha's 15th anniversary gift to me, ticked steadily in the growing darkness. She had found it at an estate sale in Chagrin Falls and fallen in love with its rich mahogany case and Westminster chimes. It will last longer than both of us, she had said when I worried about the cost. It will be something for Sarah to remember us by. Outside, the first spring crickets began their evening song in the garden. Martha had planted, and I still tended every morning. Something cold and hard settled in my chest, replacing the warmth I had felt hearing my daughter's voice just moments before. It was a feeling I recognized from construction sites, when weight-bearing walls were removed carelessly, when the whole structure shifted, and nothing would ever be stable again. They thought I was a burden. They thought I was confused, helpless, ready to be managed and discarded, like worn-out furniture that had outlived its usefulness. They were already spending my money, already planning their new life in Beechwood, while I rotted away in some cut-rate nursing facility, warehoused with other inconvenient parents whose children had more important things to do than care for the people who had sacrificed everything for them. But I wasn't dead yet. and I wasn't nearly as confused as they believed. The morning routine had become my anchor since Martha died, the only thing that kept me tethered to any sense of normal life. 7:30. Coffee in the mug she had given me for Father's Day 12 years ago. The one with "World's Best Dad" in fading letters that I had never been able to bring myself to replace. 7:45. Checked the thermostat, though I kept it at the same 72 degrees Martha preferred, even though heating bills for one person seemed wasteful. 8 of the clock. Retrieve the plain dealer from the driveway, though I could read it online now and save the subscription fee. I moved through these rituals like a man underwater, each action performed with the careful attention of someone who understood that routine was all that stood between order and chaos. The coffee maker gurgled to life with the same sound it had made every morning for 8 years. A Cuisinart model Martha had picked out at Target after our old Mr. Coffee finally died. She had insisted we needed the programmable kind, even though I had never programmed anything more complicated than a radio in my life. "Trust me, Harold," she had said with that patient smile she used when teaching me about modern conveniences. "Once you learn to set it up, you will wonder how you ever lived without fresh coffee waiting for you every morning." The first sip always disappointed me. Too strong or too weak. Never the perfect balance Martha achieved without measuring. As if she had some intuitive understanding of proportions that I lacked. She had had that gift with everything coffee. Seasoning. How much sympathy to offer when neighbors shared their troubles. How long to let me struggle with a project before offering help. I carried my mug to Martha's reading chair and opened the newspaper, though my eyes couldn't focus on the words. The business section reminded me of Michael's unemployment. How he had lost his financial advisor position at that downtown firm for ethical concerns that they would never fully explain to us. The real estate section showed houses selling for astronomical prices, including one on Coventry Road just 6 blocks away. $850,000 for a house smaller than mine, built in 2005, with none of the custom details I had added over 25 years. $850 for a house built with vinyl siding and laminate floors. Mine was older but better constructed, with hardwood throughout, custom cabinetry I had built myself. A kitchen renovation that had taken me 3 summers of weekend work. Michael wasn't wrong about the value. I could probably get $900,000. Maybe more if the market kept climbing. The thought should have made me proud. Validation of decades of careful maintenance and improvement. Instead, it made me sick to my stomach. By 9 of the clock, I was in my workshop in the garage, surrounded by tools that still felt natural in my hands, despite the arthritis that made fine work increasingly difficult. The smell of sawdust and machine oil brought back memories of building Sarah's dollhouse when she was 7, working in secret after she had gone to bed. 3 months of careful cutting and sanding, creating a perfect replica of our home complete with miniature furniture Martha had sewn by hand. I remembered every detail of that project. The tiny crown molding cut with a hobby knife. The working electrical system I had wired with dollhouse components, ordered from a catalog. The miniature family Martha had positioned in the living room. Sarah had screamed with delight Christmas morning, declaring it the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Daddy, it is just like our house," she had said, wrapping her small arms around my neck with the fierce intensity of childhood love. "Did you really make all this yourself? Your daddy can build anything," Martha had said, her voice thick with pride and love. "He built this whole house, didn't he? Of course he can build a little one." That dollhouse was probably still in her old bedroom, gathering dust like all the other remnants of her childhood I had been too sentimental to dispose of. Everything I had built for her, sacrificed for her, saved for her, now reduced to obstacles preventing her from claiming her inheritance. My hands found the folder I kept in the workbench drawer. The one containing 30 years of receipts and records. Martha had insisted I save. "You never know when you might need them," she had said in that practical way of hers. And as usual, she had been right about more than I had realized at the time. Case Western Reserve University tuition receipts. $48,000 over 4 years. When that amount of money could have bought a decent house in many neighborhoods. I remembered those double shifts, coming home with concrete dust in my hair and plaster under my fingernails. My back aching from hauling materials up 3 flights of stairs on downtown renovation projects. Martha would have coffee waiting, and would massage my shoulders while I paid bills at this very kitchen table, her small hands working out the knots that came from 10-hour days of physical labor. "Harold, you are working yourself to death," she had said one particularly brutal winter night, watching me calculate how to afford Sarah's spring semester while still keeping up with the mortgage and her mother's medical bills. "Maybe we should look into student loans, or have Sarah get a part-time job. She deserves better than we had. Martha, she is smart enough for anything pre-med, law school, whatever she wants. I don't want her starting adult life in debt or having to work when she should be studying." Martha had kissed the top of my head, her hand still kneading the tension from my shoulders. "Just don't give her so much that she forgets to be grateful. Sometimes struggle teaches us the value of what we have." I should have listened. God. I should have listened to my wife's wisdom instead of my own need to provide everything I had never had as a child. The wedding receipts were there too. A thick stack held together with a rubber band that had probably been around since 1995, $32,000 for one day. I had told Sarah we could afford $5,000, maybe $8,000 if we stretched the budget. And I picked up some weekend work, but she had cried real tears about wanting her dream wedding, about not being embarrassed in front of Michael's family, who apparently had money and expectations about these things. "Daddy, please," she had said, using the voice that had gotten her everything from ice cream for dinner to a car for her 16th birthday. "I will never ask for anything else. I promise. This is the most important day of my life." So I had worked weekends for 6 months, installing hardwood floors for a contractor friend who paid me under the table. Saturdays and Sundays spent on my knees with a nail gun. My regular work week already pushing 50 hours. Martha had worried about my health, about the way I had fallen asleep in my chair after dinner, too exhausted to do anything but watch television until bedtime. "Daddy, you are the best father in the world," Sarah had whispered during our dance at the reception, her head on my shoulder, her wedding dress rustling against my rented tuxedo. "I will never forget this. I will never forget everything you have done for me." But she had forgotten. Just like she had forgotten who co-signed her first car loan when her credit wasn't good enough at 22. Just like she had forgotten who made the calls to get her that marketing job when she was unemployed for 8 months after graduation, using connections I had built over decades in the construction industry. I found the bank statements from 2 years ago, after Michael lost his position at the investment firm. They had moved in temporarily, just until Michael found something new. I had never charged them rent, never even suggested they contribute to utilities or groceries. I would pay the increased heating bills, the larger grocery tabs, the extra wear and tear on everything from the washing machine to the hot water heater. Michael would pat my shoulder and call me the most generous man in Ohio. Sarah would hug me and say, "Dad, we will pay you back when we get on our feet. You know we are good for it." They had been on their feet for over a year now, both working good jobs, both making more money than I ever had in construction, but they had never mentioned moving out. Never mentioned paying me back for the thousands of dollars in support I had provided during their crisis. The house had become their base of operations while they planned my exile. I walked upstairs to Martha's side of our bedroom, still unchanged after 2 years. Her jewelry box sat on the dresser, a carved wooden box I had made for her birthday in 1979, inlaid with a heart-shaped piece of ebony. Her reading glasses were folded beside the lamp she had used for late-night mysteries, the tortoiseshell frames she had chosen because they made her feel sophisticated. I opened the bottom drawer where we had kept our important papers and pulled out our original house deed, the document that had made everything else possible. Harold and Martha Mitchell, purchased 1981. No liens, no co-signers, no complications. My name only now that Martha was gone, the house legally and completely mine to do with as I chose. Standing there in the bedroom where Martha had spent her last days surrounded by everything we had built together, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp as broken glass every time I breathed, but underneath it something harder was forming. Something that felt like the steel reinforcement bars I used to install in concrete foundations, cold, strong, and permanent. They wanted to put me away and sell my life's work. They thought I was too old, too confused, too grateful for their attention to fight back. But I had been building things my entire life, solving problems that stumped younger men, making decisions that affected other people's safety and livelihood. I looked at Martha's photo on the nightstand, remembering her voice from all those years ago. Don't give her so much that she forgets to be grateful. Well, Martha, our daughter, had definitely forgotten, but she was about to remember that her old man wasn't as helpless as she thought. I walked to my home office and pulled out the business card I had kept in my desk drawer for 3 years. Todd Fisher, estate planning attorney. Martha had insisted we meet with him after her cancer diagnosis, just to make sure our affairs were in order, and Sarah would be protected if anything happened to both of us. We need to make sure everything's legal and clear, Martha had said during one of her good days, when the chemotherapy wasn't making her too sick to think about practical matters. I don't want Sarah having to deal with legal complications on top of grief. We had never imagined she would be planning to dispose of me like unwanted furniture. It was time for another consultation. The next morning, I walked through my house like a stranger seeing it for the first time. But instead of seeing home, I was seeing what Sarah and Michael saw: square footage, market value, liquid assets waiting to be converted into their Beechwood dream house with the lake view. In the kitchen, I ran my hand along the granite countertop I had installed myself, working by lamplight after my regular job because we couldn't afford to hire contractors. The project had taken me 3 months of evenings and weekends, learning to cut granite with tools I had never used before, watching YouTube videos and reading instruction manuals until I understood every aspect of the installation. Martha had picked out the pattern speckled gray with veins of gold that caught the morning light just right. It looks expensive, she had worried when we first saw it at the stone yard. Harold, we really cannot afford this. You want it. You will have it, I had told her. The same thing I had said about the bay window, the hardwood floors, the custom bathroom renovation. I will make it work. And I had, like everything else in this house. I had made it work through determination and sweat and love for the people who mattered most to me. She had made coffee on this counter every morning for 16 years, until the cancer took her strength away, and I had to learn to be the one who remembered how she liked her eggs, how much cream she took in her coffee, what temperature she preferred for the house in winter. I remembered Christmas morning when 3-year-old Sarah took her first wobbly steps. Right here, from the refrigerator to Martha's outstretched arms, we would both cried with joy. Martha scooping our daughter up and spinning her around while I scrambled for the camera, desperate to capture the moment that seemed to contain all our hopes for the future. Our baby's walking in our house, Martha had whispered, tears streaming down her face in the house we built for her. The living room held 25 years of Christmas mornings, birthday parties, graduation celebrations, and quiet Sunday afternoons when the 3 of us would spread the plain dealer across the coffee table and argue about sports teams or politics or Sarah's latest boyfriend. I could still see 7-year-old Sarah's face lighting up at the sight of the dollhouse I had spent 3 months building in the garage, working in secret after she had gone to bed. Martha had sewn tiny curtains for the windows, made miniature furniture from cardboard and fabric scraps, even created a tiny family of dolls to live in the replica of our home. Daddy, it is just like our house, Sarah had squealed, and it was. I had made it a perfect replica, down to the little bay window in what represented her bedroom. That bay window had cost me 6 months of overtime, but it had been worth every hour to see Martha's face when she realized what I was building for her. She had seen it in a magazine and fallen in love with the idea of reading there in the afternoons, curled up with her mysteries while winter snow fell outside. Harold, we cannot afford this. She had worried when she saw me marking measurements on the wall, calculating angles and support requirements. The regular window is fine. You want it. You will have it, I told her. I will make it work. I had learned to cut angles I had never cut before, measured and remeasured until my back ached from crawling around the frame. I had watched YouTube videos about window installation, read construction manuals until I understood the engineering principles involved. The final result was perfect, a curved bay that caught the morning light beautifully and gave Martha the reading nook she had dreamed of. Now some stranger would sit in that window. Someone who had no idea what it had cost in time and love and determination. I climbed the stairs to Sarah's old room, still painted the soft yellow she had chosen for her 16th birthday, not pink. She had insisted when Martha suggested something more traditionally feminine. Yellow is cheerful without being childish. She had been right, as usual. The color had aged well, still looking fresh and bright, even though she had been gone from this room for 15 years. The small white desk I had built to fit perfectly under the window was still there, along with the matching bookshelf where she had displayed her academic awards and photographs from high school activities. This was the room where I had rocked her through colicky nights as a baby, where Martha and I had helped her with algebra homework and science projects, where we had had countless conversations about her future and dreams and the kind of person she wanted to become. In one corner stood the hope chest I had built for her 18th birthday, crafted from cherry wood and lined with cedar to protect whatever treasures she chose to store there. For your future home, I had told her when she opened it, somewhere to keep the things that matter most. I wondered what she had kept in there, or if she had kept anything at all. Maybe it was empty now. Just another piece of furniture to be disposed of when they cleared out the house for sale. The master bedroom was the hardest room to face. Martha's side of the bed still had her water glass on the nightstand, her bookmark still marking page 247 of the Louise Penny novel she would never finish. I had built these walk-in closets with my own hands, custom designed to fit Martha's height perfectly. Her clothes still hung there, organized by season and color the way she had always preferred, still smelling faintly of the white shoulders perfume she had worn for 30 years. This was the room where we had planned our future, where we had whispered about our dreams for Sarah and the grandchildren we had hoped would fill this house with laughter someday. This was where Martha had died holding my hand while machines beeped around us in the mechanical rhythm of modern dying, where she had made me promise to take care of myself and not let anyone take advantage of my generous nature. Promise me you will not let them walk all over you, she had said near the end, her voice barely a whisper, but her grip on my hand surprisingly strong. You are too good, Harold, too generous. Promise me you will stand up for yourself. I had promised. But I hadn't kept that promise. Had I? I would let Sarah and Michael live in my house rent-free for 8 months, drain my savings for their emergencies, treat me like a convenient resource while they planned my disposal. Martha had seen it coming somehow. The way wives see things husbands miss. The law offices of Fisher and Associates occupied the second floor of a restored brick building on Euclid Avenue, the kind of place that specialized in helping regular people with real problems, rather than impressing corporate clients with marble lobbies and overpriced art. I had chosen my best suit, the charcoal gray one Martha had picked out for me to wear to important meetings, and arrived 15 minutes early. The way my father had taught me was proper for any business appointment. Todd Fisher was younger than I had expected, maybe 55, with graying temples and the patient demeanor of a man who had heard every family horror story twice. His office was lined with law books and family photos, a wife, 2 teenagers, a golden retriever, the kind of normal life Martha and I had tried to build before cancer changed everything. Mr. Mitchell, good to see you again. Todd poured coffee from a small machine in the corner, the rich smell filling the space between legal documents and filing cabinets. I remember you and Martha from a few years back. I am so sorry for your loss. Thank you. I accepted the coffee, surprised by how steady my voice sounded, despite the emotional earthquake I had experienced the night before. I need to discuss something delicate about my daughter and son-in-law. Todd settled behind his desk, pen ready, his expression shifting to the professional alertness that meant he was prepared for whatever family drama I was about to unfold. I am listening. I told him everything. The overheard phone call, their plans to sell my house and put me in a nursing home, their eagerness to spend my money on their Beechwood dream house. Todd's expression never changed, but I caught him shaking his head slightly when I described their calculation of my worth, their casual discussion of my disposal. Unfortunately, Mr. Mitchell, this scenario is more common than you would think, Todd said when I finished. He put down his pen and leaned back in his chair, his expression a mixture of professional sympathy and personal sadness. Adult children often assume they know what is best for their aging parents, especially when valuable assets are involved. The sense of entitlement can be remarkable, but they cannot actually do anything, can they? I mean, legally? I asked, though part of me was terrified of the answer. Let's start with the basics. The house is titled in your name only since your wife's passing, correct? That is right. Martha and I owned it jointly, But when she died, it transferred to me automatically through right of survivorship. Then, legally speaking, your daughter and son-in-law have absolutely no claim to your property. They cannot sell it, cannot force you into a care facility, cannot make any decisions about your assets without your explicit consent. Todd pulled a legal pad from his drawer and began making notes. The house belongs to you. Period. You could sell it tomorrow, give it away, or leave it to charity in your will. It is entirely your decision. Relief flooded through me like warm water, followed immediately by something sharper and more energizing. Anger, yes, but also determination. So if I wanted to sell it myself, you could put it on the market tomorrow if you chose to. It is your property, your decision entirely. Todd looked up from his notes, studying my face with the careful attention of someone who had learned to read between the lines of family conflicts. May I ask why you are considering that option? I thought about Sarah's laugh when she had called me a burden, about Michael's cold calculation of my worth, about 25 years of sacrifice reduced to a real estate transaction. I thought about Martha's warning about being too generous, too trusting, too willing to give everything away. They think I am helpless, confused, I said, my hands clenching around the coffee cup. They think they can manage me like a piece of property, warehouse me somewhere convenient, while they enjoy the proceeds of my life's work. Maybe it is time I showed them exactly how sharp my mind really is. Todd was quiet for a moment, studying my face with the careful attention of a lawyer who had seen too many family relationships destroyed by greed and entitlement. Cleveland's housing market is incredibly strong right now, especially in Shaker Heights. Properties are selling within days, often for cash offers above asking price. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. If you were serious about selling quickly, before your daughter and son-in-law returned from their trip, how quickly could it happen? With the right buyer, and there are plenty of investors looking for properties like yours, we could have a sale completed within a week, maybe less. Todd leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious. But Mr. Mitchell, this is a major decision. Once you sell, there is no going back. You need to be absolutely certain this is what you want to do. I built that house with my own hands. Mr. Fisher, every board, every nail, every custom detail. I know exactly what I am doing, and I know exactly what it is worth both financially and personally. We spent the next hour discussing practicalities, market value estimates, cash buyer networks, legal requirements for quick sales. Todd explained that he could have everything prepared within 24 hours if I was serious about proceeding. But he also made sure I understood the irreversible nature of what I was considering. The consultation fee is $200, Todd said as I prepared to leave. If you decide to move forward, that applies toward my legal fees for the sale. I paid in cash from my wallet, money that represented careful budgeting and disciplined saving over decades of construction work. Walking to my truck in the spring sunshine, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, and for the first time since her betrayal, I smiled. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I could picture her in some hotel lobby in Minneapolis, probably checking her watch, wondering why her grateful old father wasn't jumping to answer her call like a trained dog. Let her wonder. Let her and Michael make their plans about my future. My house, my life. They were in for the surprise of their lives. The phone kept ringing as I climbed into my truck. Todd Fisher's business card secure in my wallet, and a plan forming in my mind that would teach my ungrateful daughter exactly who she was dealing with. I had built my life from nothing once before, survived the Depression as a child, fought in Korea, worked my way up from apprentice to master carpenter. I could certainly tear down what I had built and rebuild it on my own terms. The phone finally stopped ringing, but I knew she had called back. She always did when she needed something from the old man. This time she was going to get much more than she bargained for. By the time I reached my driveway, confidence had replaced the tremor in my hands. Todd Fisher's words echoed in my mind. It is your property, your decision entirely. 25 years of doubt and second-guessing had lifted like Cleveland fog in the morning sun, revealing a clarity of purpose I hadn't felt since Martha's death. I was unlocking my front door when the phone rang again. Through the window, I could see it buzzing against the kitchen counter where I had left it. Sarah's name glowing on the screen like a beacon of false concern. For the first time since her betrayal, I found myself genuinely curious about what performance she had prepared for this call. I let it ring 3 more times before answering, savoring the small power of making her wait. "Dad, there you are." Sarah's voice practically sparkled with artificial enthusiasm, the brightness sounding forced and desperate now that I knew what lay beneath it. "I was starting to worry when you didn't answer earlier. Sorry, sweetheart. I was out running some errands." I kept my tone warm and grandfatherly, though each word felt like acid in my mouth. "Doctor's appointment. You know how those things can run long." I hadn't been to the doctor, but the lie came easily. Let her think I was having health problems that would support her narrative of my decline. "Oh, I hope everything's okay," she said, and for a moment the concern in her voice almost sounded genuine. "How is Minneapolis treating you?" "Oh, you know how these business conferences are. But listen, I have the most wonderful news." She paused for dramatic effect, and I could almost see her practicing this conversation in her hotel room mirror. "Michael and I have been planning something very special for you." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles going white as I prepared for whatever manipulative presentation she had prepared. "Oh, we want to treat you to a vacation. You deserve some rest and relaxation after everything you have been through since Mom died." Her voice carried that practiced sympathy I now recognized as manipulation, the tone social workers probably used when convincing families to surrender difficult relatives. "There is this beautiful place we found. It is like a resort, but with medical staff on hand, just in case you need anything." A resort with medical staff. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. She couldn't even be honest enough to call it what it was: a nursing home. A warehouse for inconvenient parents whose children had better things to do than care for them. "That sounds lovely, sweetheart," I managed, amazed at how calm my voice sounded while rage burned in my chest. "You really didn't need to go to such trouble for me." "Nonsense. You are family." Michael's voice came through in the background, and I realized he must have been listening on speakerphone. How long had they been planning this presentation? How many times had they rehearsed their lines? "We have already made all the arrangements." Of course they had. They would probably put down a deposit, signed papers, maybe even toured the facility to make sure it met their standards for disposing of burdensome parents. "When were you thinking?" I asked, knowing full well they wanted me gone before they returned to claim their inheritance. "Well, we should be back by next Friday," Sarah said, her voice brightening with the prospect of success. "We were hoping you could be ready by then. Just pack some clothes and personal items. You know, the essentials." The essentials. Not the photo albums Martha had lovingly arranged, not the furniture I had built with my own hands, not the tools that had fed our family for 4 decades. Just the essentials for an old man being shuffled off to die in institutional anonymity. "Actually, Sarah, I have a surprise for you too when you get back." "Oh, Dad, what kind of surprise?" She sounded genuinely pleased, probably imagining I had signed papers or made their job easier somehow. Maybe she thought I had already started packing, grateful for their thoughtful management of my declining years. I walked to the bay window I had built for Martha, looking out at the garden she had planted with such care and hope. The tulips were coming up, bright yellow and red against the dark soil, beautiful and alive and utterly indifferent to human plans and betrayals. "It is something I have been working on since our last conversation. I think you will be very surprised." "You are so sweet, Dad. We will talk about everything when we get home." "Okay, get some rest and we will take care of everything else." Sweet. She called me sweet while planning to steal my life, to reduce 40 years of love and sacrifice to a financial transaction. But I was done being sweet, done being manageable, done being grateful for scraps of attention from the child I had given everything to. "I will, sweetheart. I love you. Love you too, Dad. See you Friday." The line went dead, and I set the phone down with hands steadier than they had been in weeks. I walked to my home office and opened my laptop, the screen glowing to life with possibilities I had never considered before. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment before I typed real estate agents. Cleveland. The search results filled my screen like ammunition in a war I was finally ready to fight. I had always been methodical. 30 years as a construction foreman had taught me to research thoroughly before making any decision that couldn't be undone. Tonight, that methodical nature would serve a different purpose. I clicked through agent profiles, comparing success rates and client testimonials like I used to compare suppliers and subcontractors. Shaker Heights, Beechwood, University Heights, neighborhoods where houses sold for the kind of money Sarah and Michael were already spending in their dreams. One name kept appearing in the top results: Brian Connor, 43 years old, specialized in quick sales, averaged 18 days from listing to closing. His photo showed a professional smile and confident eyes. The kind of man who understood that time was money, and results mattered more than relationships. His testimonials were exactly what I needed to see. Brian sold our house in 6 days. Cash buyer lined up within 48 hours. Smooth closing. No complications. Professional service that exceeded expectations. I stared at his direct phone number, prominently displayed beneath his credentials and awards. This was it. The moment that would set everything in motion. Once I made this call, there would be no going back to being the grateful, manageable old man my daughter expected. Martha's photo on my desk seemed to be watching me, and I could almost hear her voice. "Harold, are you sure about this?" I was sure, more sure than I had been about anything since her funeral, when I would stood beside her grave and promised to honor her memory by taking care of myself and not letting anyone take advantage of my generous nature. I dialed Brian Connor's number with steady fingers. "Brian Connor, Connor Real Estate. How can I help you, Mr. Connor? My name is Harold Mitchell. I am interested in selling my house quickly. How fast can these things actually happen?" "Well, Mr. Mitchell, that depends on several factors: property condition, market demand, pricing strategy." His voice carried the confidence of someone who had navigated hundreds of quick sales. "But with the right property and realistic expectations, I have closed deals in as little as 10 days with cash buyers." "What kind of timeline are you looking at?" 10 days. My heart hammered against my ribs like a construction worker's nail gun. "That fast?" "Absolutely. Cleveland's market is incredibly hot right now, especially for well-maintained properties in established neighborhoods like Shaker Heights. Cash investors are competing for quality properties. Can you tell me a bit about your house?" I looked around my kitchen, seeing it through a buyer's eyes for the first time in 25 years. 2-story, 3,400 square feet, built in 1981, but I have renovated extensively over the years. Shaker Heights area, near the elementary school. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. I have maintained it well, did most of the work myself. Brian's voice sharpened with interest. That sounds exactly like what several of my investor clients are looking for. Original owner, well-maintained, established neighborhood. Those are premium selling points in today's market. Would you be interested in a property assessment? How quickly could you come by? I can be there this afternoon if you are available. Say 3 of the clock. I glanced at the clock on the microwave. It was just past noon. 3 of the clock works perfectly. Let me give you the address after I hung up. I sat in the sudden quiet of my kitchen, the magnitude of what I had set in motion beginning to settle in my chest like concrete setting in a foundation. In 3 hours, a stranger would walk through the house Martha and I had built together, assigning dollar values to our memories, calculating profit margins on our love. I spent the next 2 hours cleaning obsessively. Old habits from Martha's time when she'd insist the house be spotless for any visitor. Even the cable repairman. I dusted the bay window, straightened the throw pillows on the couch she had sewn herself, made sure every surface gleamed with the kind of attention to detail that had made me a respected foreman. But this cleaning felt different. I wasn't preparing for guests or maintenance workers. I was preparing for an execution. At exactly 3 of the clock, the doorbell rang. I smoothed my shirt, took a deep breath that carried the scent of Martha's lavender sachets still tucked in the linen closet, and walked toward the front door. My hand trembled slightly as it closed around the brass doorknob I had installed myself 15 years ago, chosen to match the exterior hardware Martha had fallen in love with at the home improvement store. Beyond this door waited either my salvation or my damnation. And for the first time in months, I felt completely alive with possibility. I turned the handle and opened the door to my future. Brian Connor looked exactly like his photo professional but approachable. Early 40s with the kind of confident bearing that came from years of successful deals and satisfied clients. He carried a leather portfolio and tablet, and the moment he stepped inside my entryway, his eyes went wide with genuine appreciation. Wow. He stopped completely, his gaze traveling up the crown molding I had installed by hand to the hardwood floors. Martha and I had selected together at a warehouse sale in Akron. Mr. Mitchell, this is exactly what I was hoping for. I watched him take in the details that represented decades of weekend projects and careful improvements. The way the afternoon light streamed through Martha's bay window, casting geometric patterns on the oak floors, the seamless flow from living room to dining room that I had achieved by removing a load-bearing wall and installing a laminated beam, the built-in bookcases I had designed around the fireplace, crafted to Martha's exact specifications for displaying her collection of first-edition mysteries. His appreciation was genuine, professional, the recognition of someone who understood quality when he saw it. "You weren't kidding about maintaining this place," he said, pulling out his tablet and starting to take photos. "These hardwood floors original? Installed them myself in 1984. Martha wanted something that would last, so we went with 3/4-inch solid oak. Red oak, not white, it ages better, develops more character over time." I found myself falling into the familiar rhythm of discussing my work. Proud despite everything that was happening. These floors had seen Sarah's first steps, countless Christmas mornings, dance lessons in the living room, when she was 8, and wanted to be a ballerina. And this kitchen, Brian stopped at the granite countertop, running his hand along the edge with the appreciation of someone who recognized custom work. "This is all custom installation, every inch." Martha picked the pattern, said the gold veining reminded her of sunshine on water. My voice caught slightly. "I spent 3 weekends learning how to cut granite properly. YouTube University," Martha called it. Brian was typing notes on his tablet, photographing the custom cabinets I had built to accommodate Martha's height, testing faucets and outlets with the thoroughness of someone who knew what buyers looked for and what problems cost money. "Mr. Mitchell, I have to be honest with you. In my 15 years doing this, I rarely see properties maintained to this standard. Most people either don't have the skills or don't want to invest the time. I am an engineer by training, construction foreman by trade was. Anyway, I believe in building things right the first time and maintaining them properly thereafter. It shows in every detail." He gestured toward the living room. "May I see the rest?" I nodded, following him as he admired the open floor plan that had required removing 2 walls and installing support beams. The built-in entertainment center I had designed around our old television. The way Martha's decorating choices had turned our construction project into a warm, welcoming home. "This bay window, that is custom work too. Built it for my wife. She wanted a reading nook where she could watch the garden and read her mystery novels. I could picture her there with her Louise Penny books and afternoon tea, her reading glasses perched on her nose, occasionally looking up to watch birds at the feeder I had installed just outside the window. She'd sit there for hours on winter afternoons, completely content with her books and her view of the world we had created together." Brian was taking measurements now, his excitement barely contained as he documented room dimensions and architectural details. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to show you some comparable sales from the last 6 months." He pulled up listings on his tablet, scrolling through properties that looked like magazine photos compared to the basic functionality most people settled for. Similar properties in this area have been selling for $850,000 to $920,000. My chest tightened. That was more than Sarah and Michael had estimated in their cruel conversation. More money than I had ever imagined the house could be worth. "But given the condition and custom features of your home," Brian continued, "I am thinking we price it at $890,000. That should move it quickly while getting you top dollar for your investment." $890,000. I sat down heavily in Martha's reading chair, the numbers spinning in my head like a construction crew's saw blade. "That much, Mr. Mitchell. You are sitting on a gold mine. Properties like this don't come on the market often, especially not in this condition." Brian's voice carried the confidence of someone who understood market forces and buyer psychology. "I actually have an investment group that has been looking for exactly this type of property. What kind of investment group? They specialize in high-quality rental properties in established neighborhoods. They pay cash. No financing contingencies. No repair negotiations. No appraisal requirements that could delay or kill the deal. They can close in 10 business days if everything checks out. 10 business days. Sarah and Michael would return from Minneapolis in 8 days, expecting to find their grateful, manageable father ready to be shipped off to their carefully selected facility. What is the catch? Why would they pay cash and close so quickly? Brian smiled with the confidence of someone who had answered this question many times. No catch, just business efficiency. Cash means no loan delays. No appraisal contingencies that could derail the transaction. They do their own inspections with their own contractors. But frankly, your house is in better shape than most new construction I see. I looked around the living room where Sarah had taken her first steps, where Martha and I had hosted Christmas mornings and birthday parties, and quiet Sunday afternoons reading The Plain Dealer together. 25 years of memories embedded in these walls. And now I was calculating their dollar value like any other commodity. When would I need to be out? Standard contract gives you 30 days after closing, but they are flexible if you need more time. The main thing is getting clear title and completing the paperwork efficiently. I thought about Sarah's voice on the phone, calling me sweet while planning to steal my life. I thought about Michael's cold calculation, reducing me to a burden to be managed and disposed of. I thought about Martha's warning about being too generous, too trusting, too willing to sacrifice my own well-being for people who took my love for granted. Let's do it. Brian's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing genuine excitement. Excellent choice. Mr. Mitchell, let me call them right now and set up the initial consultation. I watched him dial, heard him describe my property with the enthusiasm of someone who had found buried treasure. Shaker Heights area, original owner, immaculate condition, custom features throughout. He is motivated to close quickly. He ended the call with a broad smile. They want to move forward immediately. I can have the initial contracts ready by tomorrow morning. And they would like to do a walkthrough tomorrow afternoon. The sun was setting through Martha's bay window, casting golden light across the room where I had just agreed to sell 25 years of my life. But for the first time since that devastating phone call, I felt something that had been missing for too long. Control, pure, undiluted control over my own destiny. How does 9 a.m. sound for the contract signing? The question hung in the air like sawdust after a long day of construction work, and I realized Brian was waiting for an answer that would change everything. The grandfather clock in the hallway, Martha's 15th anniversary gift to me, ticked steadily in the silence. 9 a.m. sounds perfect. After Brian left with promises of contracts and closing timelines, I stood alone in the house that would soon belong to someone else. The evening light through Martha's windows painted everything golden, like a photograph of a life I was about to leave behind. But it wasn't sadness I felt. It was anticipation, pure and energizing as the first day on a new construction project. Brian arrived the next morning with contracts, a notary, and coffee for everyone, the kind of professional efficiency I had always respected in contractors and suppliers. I read every line with the thoroughness that had made me a good foreman, checking details the way I used to check blueprints and material specifications. Sale price: $890,000. Cash purchase. Closing date: 10 business days from signing. The notary, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and patient demeanor, walked me through each signature with the same care Martha had used when explaining something new. Minimal contingencies, she explained as I signed my name in careful script. Just the title search and final walkthrough. Very straightforward transaction. And I can remain in the house for 30 days after closing if needed. That is correct. Mr. Mitchell, though most sellers prefer to move out sooner rather than later, just for peace of mind and clean closure. Peace of mind. I almost laughed. The only peace of mind I would have would come from seeing Sarah and Michael's faces when they discovered what their burden had accomplished while they planned his disposal. I signed my name with steady hands. And just like that, the process was in motion. Each signature felt like removing a piece of scaffolding from a completed building, taking down the temporary supports that had held everything together, while the real structure formed underneath. The first 3 days passed in a blur of paperwork and inspections. The title company began their search through decades of records, confirming what I already knew, that the house belonged entirely to me, free and clear of any liens or encumbrances. The investors sent their team, a polite crew who admired my workmanship and found nothing to complain about. "Your father-in-law really knew what he was doing," one of them told his partner, assuming I was already gone and speaking freely. "These floors, this electrical work, the plumbing, all top quality. No surprises here." If only they knew the surprises were just beginning. Days 4 through 6, I became a man with a secret mission. I researched apartments online, looking for something small but comfortable. Somewhere I could start over with nearly $900,000 in the bank. After decades of mortgage payments and careful budgeting, the idea of having that much money available was both thrilling and terrifying. I found a place in Lakewood, a senior community near the lake with golf courses and a community center. The kind of place Martha and I had sometimes talked about for our golden years. "When we are too old to take care of this big house," she had said, though neither of us had really believed that day would come. I also called storage facilities, planning which of Martha's things I had keep, and which I would have to leave for the new owners. Her china, definitely the set we had bought piece by piece during our first years of marriage. Her jewelry box that I had made with my own hands. The photo albums she had organized so carefully, documenting every milestone of our life together. The essentials of a life lived in partnership, now reduced to what one person could reasonably maintain in a smaller space. Days 7 through 9 brought a strange confidence I hadn't felt in years. Each morning I woke up knowing I was one step closer to freedom. One step closer to showing my daughter that her confused old father was considerably sharper than she had ever imagined. Mrs. Patterson from next door noticed the increased activity, asked about the inspectors and official-looking people who kept appearing at my door. "Just some maintenance work being done," I told her, hating the half-truth but knowing the full truth would spread through the neighborhood before I was ready. She had been Martha's closest friend, and I knew she would be hurt that I hadn't confided in her about such a major decision. On day 8, Brian called with final confirmation that everything was proceeding smoothly. "Everything's on track for tomorrow's closing. Mr. Mitchell, the buyers are thrilled with the inspection results. Wire transfer will be completed the same day, so you will have access to funds immediately." That night, I packed a single suitcase with clothes and personal items. Not because I was moving yet, but because I wanted to be ready for anything. I looked at Martha's photo on our dresser and whispered, "I hope you understand what I am doing. Sweetheart, I hope you know this isn't about the money." Friday morning arrived bright and clear. The kind of spring day Martha used to say was Cleveland at its finest. I dressed carefully in my best suit, not the funeral suit, but the navy one Martha had bought me for Sarah's college graduation, when we had been so proud of her accomplishments and so hopeful about her future. The title company office was all professional efficiency and congratulations. The buyers were represented by their attorney, a sharp woman who double-checked every document with the same attention to detail I had always brought to construction projects. Brian handled the paperwork like a master craftsman working with familiar tools. "Mr. Mitchell, if you will sign here, and initial there." Each signature felt like cutting another chain that had bound me to other people's expectations. The deed transfer, the settlement statement, the final acknowledgement that 1247 Maple Street no longer belonged to Harold Mitchell. "And this is your wire transfer confirmation. $890,000. Less closing costs has been deposited to your account." I stared at the numbers on the paper. More money than I had earned in the best 5 years of my construction career combined. More money than Sarah and Michael had dreamed their burden could access or control. We shook hands all around, everyone pleased with the smooth transaction and quick closing. Brian walked me to my truck, promising to stay in touch if I ever needed real estate services again. "You made the right choice, Mr. Mitchell. Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what we need to rediscover who we really are." I drove home through neighborhoods I had known for 25 years, past the elementary school where Sarah had learned to read, past the park where Martha and I used to walk every Sunday morning after church. But instead of nostalgia, I felt liberation. I pulled into my driveway and sat in my truck, looking at the house that was no longer mine. The keys to the front door felt heavy in my palm. But tomorrow, I would hand them over to the new owners. and walk away from this chapter of my life. Sarah and Michael were due back from Minneapolis in 3 days. They would arrive expecting to find their grateful, manageable father, ready to be packed off to their carefully selected facility. Instead, they were going to find an empty house and a lesson they would never forget. The locksmith arrived Saturday morning at 8 sharp, a heavy-set man named Eddie, who had seen every kind of domestic crisis Cleveland had to offer. I had found his number online, specifically requesting someone who could work weekends with cash payment and no questions asked security upgrade. Eddie asked, studying my front door with the professional eye of someone who had changed locks for cheating spouses, bitter divorces, and family disputes of every imaginable variety. New ownership situation, I replied, which was technically true in every sense that mattered. Better safe than sorry. Eddie nodded, like he had heard it before, and got to work with the efficient movements of someone who had performed this task thousands of times. I watched him remove the brass locks Martha had picked out 15 years ago because they matched our door knocker and complemented the exterior color scheme she had spent weeks perfecting. "These are quality locks," Eddie commented as he worked, testing the old mechanism before setting it aside. Somebody knew what they were doing when they installed them. That was me. I believe in doing things right the first time. The new locks were silver instead of brass, modern instead of traditional, functional rather than beautiful. They clicked differently when Eddie tested them, a sharper, more mechanical sound than the old ones Martha had chosen for their warmth and character. "Here are your new keys, sir. 3 copies of each, front door, back door, and garage side entrance." Eddie handed me a ring of keys that felt foreign in my palm. Nothing like the familiar weight of the keys I had carried for 15 years. The metal was cold and impersonal, lacking the worn smoothness of keys that had been used daily by people who belonged here. "That will be $450 with the emergency weekend fee." I paid in cash from my wallet. Money that would leave no paper trail connecting Harold Mitchell to this transaction. After Eddie left, I stood in my former house and began the hardest part of my plan. Packing 25 years of life into what I could carry. Martha's jewelry box went into my suitcase first. The carved wooden box I had made for her birthday in 1979, along with our wedding photos and the Louise Penny novel she had been reading when she died. Bookmark still marking page 247. My engineering certificates. Our important documents. Martha's favorite cookbook, with the handwritten notes and modifications she had made over the years. I left almost everything else. The furniture that told our story would have to stay. Most of the photo albums chronicling Sarah's childhood. Though I took a few of my favorites. Martha's clothes still hanging in our closet, still carrying the faint scent of her perfume. While I packed, I called Sunset Manor Apartments, a senior living community I had researched online during my sleepless nights of planning. "We have a lovely furnished 1-bedroom available for immediate occupancy," said Mrs. Chen, the property manager. "Month-to-month lease, if you prefer flexibility while you decide on your long-term plans." "I will take it. When can I move in?" "This afternoon if you would like. We just need first month's rent, plus security deposit." I met Mrs. Chen at the apartment complex 2 hours later. A modest but clean building designed for active seniors, with a community center, library, and well-maintained grounds that reminded me of the neighborhood Martha and I had dreamed of retiring to someday. The 1-bedroom unit was simple but comfortable, furnished with everything I needed to start over. "Cash deposit is perfectly fine, Mr. Mitchell. Many of our residents prefer to handle their finances that way." First month's rent plus deposit came to nearly $3,000, an amount that would have seemed impossible to spend casually just 2 weeks ago, but barely registered now with nearly $900,000 in my bank account. Loading my car in the gathering dusk, I caught Mrs. Patterson watching from her window next door. She waved with the tentative gesture of someone who sensed something was happening but didn't want to intrude. I waved back, feeling the weight of all the relationships I was severing, all the connections Sarah and Michael had forced me to abandon. I took one last walk through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing differently now that the house belonged to someone else. In the kitchen where Martha had taught Sarah to bake Christmas cookies every December. In the living room where we had watched Sarah open presents Christmas morning after Christmas morning, building traditions we thought would last forever. in our bedroom where Martha had taken her last breath while I held her hand and promised to honor her memory. "I am sorry, sweetheart," I said aloud to Martha's memory, my voice echoing in the empty room. "But you would understand. You always said I was too generous for my own good." I locked the new locks and drove away from Maple Street for what might be the last time. My rearview mirror full of the life I was leaving behind. The sun was setting when I arrived at Sunset Manor, my car loaded with the essentials of my existence. I carried my suitcase to my new front door, fumbling with unfamiliar keys to unfamiliar locks. Inside the small apartment, I dropped my suitcase and immediately reached for my phone. The final phase of my plan required one more purchase, one more piece of the puzzle that would capture Sarah and Michael's reaction when they discovered their keys no longer worked. I ordered a wireless security camera online, designed to look like an ordinary phone charger. It would stream video directly to my phone, allowing me to witness their shock from the safety of my new home. Monday morning, the package arrived. I spent an hour learning how to use the device, then drove to my former house one last time, using the garage door opener I had never given Sarah and Michael. I positioned the camera by the front door and taped my letter to the inside where they couldn't miss it. The letter was simple and direct. "Dear Sarah and Michael, if you are reading this, you have discovered that your keys no longer work. I heard your phone conversation about putting me in a nursing home because I am a burden. I heard you planning to sell my house, the house I built with my own hands. The house has been sold for $890,000 cash. The money is in my account, where it will stay. I have moved somewhere I am appreciated, not managed. Your belongings are in storage at Cleveland Moving Company on Euclid Avenue. You have 30 days to claim them. I gave you everything for 47 years. You repaid me by planning to warehouse me. I hope the lesson was worth the cost." Dad, Wednesday afternoon, I watched through the camera app as Sarah and Michael returned from Minneapolis. I saw their confusion when the keys didn't work, their panic as they climbed through a window, their shock and anger when they read my letter. "He sold the house," Sarah screamed. $890,000. "He kept it all. That manipulative old bastard," Michael said. "He was playing us the whole time." I watched them fight, blame each other, realize they were homeless with no savings. They had gotten exactly what they had planned for me: displacement and uncertainty. But I had something they didn't. Nearly $900,000. A comfortable apartment, and my dignity intact. Over the following months, I discovered a life I had never imagined. I joined the woodworking group at the community center, where my construction experience made me a valued teacher and mentor. For the first time since Martha's death, I felt useful again. The local Parks and Recreation Department offered me a part-time position teaching home repair classes to seniors. I accepted gratefully, finding purpose in helping others maintain their independence. 6 months later, I realized I had stopped thinking about Sarah and Michael every day. They had made their choice when they decided I was a burden rather than a beloved father. They had lost something: irreplaceable, unconditional love, and gained nothing but the consequences of their greed. I had gained something precious: the knowledge that it was never too late to start over, to stand up for yourself, to refuse to be treated as less than you are worth. On a warm evening in late summer, I sat on my apartment balcony with Martha's photo and a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint Lake Erie gold. The letter on the table beside me was an offer to coordinate the Parks Department's entire senior education program, a chance to build something meaningful with the years I had left. "What do you think, Martha?" I asked her photo, ready for another adventure. The evening breeze stirred the papers, and for a moment, I could almost hear her voice. "I am proud of you, Harold. You finally learned to stand up for yourself." I had learned more than that. I had learned that family isn't about blood, it is about respect and love and mutual support. I had learned that being alone isn't the same as being lonely when you are surrounded by people who value you. Most importantly, I had learned that it is never too late to become the person you were meant to be. For the first time in 2 years, I felt genuinely excited about tomorrow. Harold Mitchell had finally put himself first, and he was never going back.